Family vanished on road trip in 1998. 20 years later, a drone makes a chilling discovery. They vanished on a sunny August morning, and no one ever found a trace. Jake Morrison was 14 the last time he saw his family. He had stayed home with a mild fever, wrapped in a blanket on the living room couch, watching cartoons while his parents and two little sisters packed for a road trip to Mammoth Cave. His mom kissed his forehead before leaving. His dad told him to rest up. Jenny, the youngest, promised to bring back a cool rock from the cave gift shop. That was the last time Jake heard their voices. By that evening, they were supposed to call from their motel in Kentucky. They never did. The first few days were chaos. Jake's Aunt Carol came to stay with him while authorities searched for the bright yellow Honda Civic his family had been driving. Police combed routes between Columbus and southern Kentucky, but no wreckage was ever found. No skid marks, no distress calls, just a void. The working theory was that they'd had an accident somewhere remote, maybe slid off the road and into a ravine. But even with helicopters and search dogs, nothing turned up. No vehicle, no bodies, no answers. Weeks passed, then months, eventually years. And Jake never stopped looking. Jake stood at the edge of a construction site in rural Kentucky, his steel-toed boots sinking into the damp soil. He wasn't here to build anything this time. He was here because of a sinkhole. The state had been running a drone survey of forested land in Daniel Boone National Forest for a proposed road project. That's when the surveyor noticed the glint of metal in a massive natural depression, old vehicles, dozens of them, crushed and hidden beneath overgrowth and time. Jake saw the footage on the local news. What caught his attention was the brief glimpse of faded yellow paint on one of the cars. He knew that color. Within 48 hours, he was on site with Detective Amanda Cross, a Kentucky State Police veteran who had worked cold cases for nearly 2 decades. She hadn't known Jake personally, but she knew his family's story. "We've recovered 11 vehicles so far," Cross told him, walking him toward the edge of the sinkhole, where forensics teams had set up tents and floodlights. "No bodies yet, but there's evidence of foul play in at least 6 of them." Jake's heart was pounding. Foul play, missing license plates, filed down VN numbers, and some vehicles had their trunks welded shut. Jake didn't need to ask why. They showed it to him the next morning, carefully lifted from the hole by crane, placed on tarps under bright halogen lights. The Honda Civic, now rusted and pitted with age, still had a sticker from the dealership on the back bumper. Jake stepped forward, hand trembling, as he reached out to brush away some dirt from the back seat window. The feeling that hit him wasn't closure, it was terror. This wasn't an accident. Something had happened to his family, and this car buried in a hole with 10 others proved it. Cross brought in the FBI. Agent Miguel Torres, sharp-eyed and methodical, joined the investigation. The number of missing vehicles grew, 14, then 17, all linked to families who had vanished between 1996 and 2006, all supposedly random disappearances, but not anymore. "Someone's been dumping these cars here," Torres said, laying photos across a table in the temporary command center. "And whoever did it wanted them hidden for good." Why, Jake asked. Torres exchanged a look with Cross. "That's what we're going to find out." Over the next 2 weeks, the investigation unraveled a web of missing person cases that spanned multiple counties and states. Every vehicle told a story. A camping trip never completed. A family moving cross-country that never arrived. A honeymoon road trip that ended in silence. The pattern was disturbing. All victims were families. All had taken rural routes. Most had recent life insurance policies or valuable possessions. And all had disappeared without a trace. Jake Cross said one evening as they reviewed the data together, "Your family might have been one of the first, but they weren't the last." That night Jake couldn't sleep. He sat in a cheap motel room staring at faded wallpaper, haunted by memories and a growing realization this wasn't just a fluke. Someone, maybe multiple someones, had orchestrated these disappearances, and they'd done it for years. The next break came unexpectedly. A retired insurance agent named Ray DeWitt called in after seeing the news. He'd handled a few claims from missing families in the early 2000s, and remembered one detail: several of them had bought their vehicles from the same dealership in Bowling Green, Brennan Auto Sales. Jake's blood ran cold. Rick Brennan had been one of his father's old friends. Jake even remembered the day they bought the car. Brennan had taken a photo of the family smiling in front of the yellow Honda. Cross and Torres obtained a warrant. The dealership's records were incomplete, with files conveniently lost in a flood, but digital remnants told another story. VIN numbers matched several of the vehicles recovered from the sinkhole. And then came the discovery of a storage unit registered to Brennan. Inside were photos, dozens, maybe hundreds. Families smiling beside new cars, insurance documents, handwritten notes about travel plans. Jake found the photo of his own family, printed and paper-clipped, to a manila envelope labeled Morrison, August 98, Route 31E. His knees buckled. It began with a routine traffic stop. It ended in a shallow grave beneath a collapsed hunting cabin. 2 days after the discovery at the storage unit, Rick Brennan was arrested outside a golf course in Louisville. The former car dealer didn't resist. He didn't say a word. But once in federal custody, and after hours of interrogation, he finally broke. "I didn't kill them," he told Agent Torres. "But I knew what was happening. I helped make it happen." Jake sat behind the one-way glass in the observation room, hands clenched into fists, as the man who had once sold his father a car calmly confessed to helping murder entire families for insurance money. The scheme was horrifyingly simple. Brennan and a small group of co-conspirators, mostly law enforcement officers, targeted families who bought vehicles from his dealership. They tracked their planned road trips and used insider contacts to intercept them on quiet rural highways. His deputies would pull them over, Brennan said. Vehicle inspection, broken taillight, expired plates, whatever excuse worked. From there, the victims were taken to a secondary location, a remote hunting cabin once owned by Sheriff Dale Hutchkins, a man long believed to be an upstanding member of the community. "That's where they were killed," Brennan whispered. "I didn't want to know the details. I just knew they never came back." Agent Torres leaned in. "And the bodies, Hutchkins took care of that. There was a cellar beneath the cabin. That's where he buried them." After each family vanished, Margaret Pierce, a clerk at the county records office, and one of the co-conspirators filed fake reports: stolen vehicles, accidental deaths, or missing persons presumed drowned in remote areas. Then came the insurance claims. Each payout was split 3 ways: Brennan, Hutchkins, and Pierce. Brennan admitted the operation netted over $8 million over a decade. Jake felt sick. His family's lives had been reduced to a line item: just another claim, just another profit. "They were worth about $180,000, Brennan said flatly, as if reciting grocery prices. Cross and Torres pushed harder. They needed the exact location of the cabin. Brennan unfolded a hand-drawn map. 20 miles northeast of the old sinkhole, off an abandoned logging trail in Daniel Boone National Forest. "The cabin's probably collapsed by now," he said, "but the cellar," he reinforced it. "That's where the bodies are," Torres nodded. "We go at first light. Ground-penetrating radar cadaver dogs, full forensic team." Jake stood. "I want to be there," Jake Cross began. "I've waited 20 years to find them. I'm not staying behind now." Cross met Torres's eyes. After a long moment, she nodded. "Okay, but stay out of the way. This is a crime scene." The convoy left at dawn. Federal vehicles, state troopers, a forensic van, and trucks carrying specialized equipment snaked through the dense forest. Jake followed in his pickup, heart-pounding, stomach twisted in knots. They found the remains of the hunting cabin just as Brennan described. Rotten wood, collapsed roof chimney jutting like a broken fang. The clearing was overgrown and quiet, too quiet, like even nature knew to stay away. There, said Dr. Sharon Kim, the FBI's lead forensic anthropologist, pointing toward a sunken patch near the back. That depression, that's where the cellar would be. The team began scanning the area. Metal detectors pinged. Radar units revealed disturbances in the earth, at least a dozen burial anomalies. Jake watched as gloved hands began to dig slowly and methodically. The work was precise, painstaking. At noon, they found the first piece of fabric, a scrap of faded cotton, possibly a windbreaker. Jake's breath caught. His mom had been wearing a blue windbreaker the day they left. He remembered her debating whether to pack it or wear it. She chose to wear it just in case the mountain air got cold. At 2:12 p.m., Dr. Kim's voice dropped to a hush. "I've got bone." Everyone paused. Jake felt the ground tilt beneath him. This was it. This was real. Ribs first, then vertebrae, then the unmistakable curve of a human skull. Adult female Kim said, after examining the pelvis and skull structure. 5'4" to 5'6". Jake's mother had been 5'5". Cross placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to see this." "Yes," Jake said, "I do." The excavation continued into the evening. Another skeleton, smaller juvenile, Kim confirmed. 12 to 14 years old, Jenny. A second juvenile skeleton, likely his older sister Sarah. Then finally an adult male, his father. All four, all in the same ground, buried like trash. That night, as the remains were packed for transport to the FBI lab, Kim gave one last update. "There are more burial sites," she said. "Based on radar, at least a dozen more." Jake stared at the dark forest. 12 more families, 40, maybe 50 people. All vanished like his family, all forgotten. "We'll be digging for weeks," Torres said grimly. Jake nodded. "Then I'll be here." Cross looked at him. "You found them, Jake. You did what no one else could." Jake looked toward the crime scene, marked with yellow tape and floodlights. "This isn't where they belong. It's just where they died. Home is where they're remembered. Sometimes the truth sets you free. Sometimes it chains you to a past you'll never escape." The official identification came 3 days later. Dental records matched. DNA confirmed. All four remains, Jake's mother, father, and 2 sisters. Jake sat on the edge of a motel bed, staring at the soil still beneath his fingernails. He hadn't changed clothes in nearly a day. The dirt was from the excavation site, from the ground that had hidden his family's fate for 2 decades. Now there were answers. Now there was a place, a horrifying final place. Dr. Kim's voice on the phone had been gentle but clinical. "I'm sorry, Jake, but it's them, all 4. Jake whispered his thanks and hung up. It didn't feel like relief. It felt like being buried too. Torres called just after dawn. "We've arrested 3 more. 2 former deputies and a state police detective. Brennan is naming names." "How many people were involved?" Jake asked. "At least 8, Torres said. Probably more. They had inside help, law enforcement, insurance agents, even a couple of county clerks. Death certificates were faked. Claims processed in weeks. Everyone got a cut." Jake closed his eyes. "What about the others, the other families? We've identified 6 more so far," Torres said. "Same pattern, same burial sites. We're notifying relatives now." After the call, Jake sat alone with the truth. Not just about what had happened, but what hadn't. No car accident, no detour, no tragic twist of fate. Just greed wrapped in a uniform, hiding behind badges. And he thought, how many more? The next day, Jake met with Michelle Thompson, a woman whose family disappeared on a road trip to Florida in 2003. "I saw the report about the sinkhole," she said. "They mentioned a blue Honda. That was our car." Jake nodded. "You've been looking this whole time, 15 years, she said. "I kept calling police departments. They all told me the same thing. They probably just disappeared, started over, but I knew." Jake didn't speak. He didn't have to. She looked into his eyes and saw it, the knowing, the waiting, the ache. "I just wanted to thank you," she said. "You kept going. You cracked it open. Now we know." Jake swallowed. "What happens now?" She shrugged. "Now we wait. Now we find out if they're in that forest too. Jake sat with Patricia Henderson a week later. Her husband and 2 sons vanished during a camping trip in 1999. They said maybe they drowned. Maybe they got lost, but I always knew it was something else. Mothers know. She held his hand tightly. You never gave up on your family. I can't tell you what that means to the rest of us. Jake began thinking seriously for the first time that maybe his purpose didn't end with finding his own family. Maybe it started there. Cross met Jake outside the FBI field office. It's official. 14 families, she said. 47 people. Jake felt the number slam into him. 47. We found burial sites in concentric rings around the cabin, organized, patterned, like a damn graveyard. And it's all over now, Jake asked. Mostly. But we're still going through Brennan's files. Still identifying bones. She hesitated. There's something else. The dealership. We didn't find everything. Jake's family had bought their last car from Brennan's auto sales. Now Jake stood beside Mike Brennan Rick, Brennan's son, Jake's former high school friend, at the funeral. I found something, Mike said. After the FBI searched the office, I went to clean it out. I found a hidden lockbox. He handed Jake a folded piece of paper. These names, families who bought cars recently. After my dad was arrested. After it was supposed to be over. Jake scanned the names. 8 families. One of them, the Taylor family, had been in the news last week. Disappeared on a trip to West Virginia. Car found. No bodies. Jake looked up. Who else works at the dealership? Mike hesitated. Just me and my uncle, Terry Brennan, my dad's brother. He took over. Jake's stomach turned. Do you think he's continuing the operation? Mike's face was pale. I don't know, but I'm scared. If he knows I found this. Jake didn't hesitate. You're coming with me. Now. Back at Jake's house, it became clear. Terry Brennan had picked up where Rick left off. He had customer profiles, insurance data. It was all happening again. Cross and Torres convened an emergency strategy session. They laid out a trap. We'll use one of the families, Torres said. They're scheduled for a road trip next week. We'll follow them. Let Terry think he's got his next victims. Jake's eyes narrowed. Who's the family? Torres turned her laptop toward him. The Pattersons. A family Jake had done kitchen renovation work for just weeks earlier. Jake's blood ran cold. I know them. They have 2 kids. Cross nodded grimly. They'll be safe. FBI will follow. Surveillance teams. If Terry moves, we catch him in the act. Jake slammed his fist into the table. I'm not losing another family. You won't, Torres said. Not this time. The plan was airtight, but even airtight plans can bleed. Tuesday morning broke overcast and tense. Jake sat beside Detective Cross in an unmarked FBI vehicle, watching the Patterson family load up their SUV. 2 parents, 2 teenagers packing coolers and pillows like it was just another family trip. But it wasn't. It was a trap. The FBI had turned their entire route into a surveillance corridor. Backup units were posted every few miles. Snipers hidden along hillsides. A fake deputy, actually a trained agent, was stationed near mile marker 127, ready to simulate the traffic stop and bait Terry Brennan into exposing himself. But Jake's heart pounded with a steady drumbeat of dread. This is exactly how my family left, he muttered, binoculars pressed to his face. Smiling, laughing, not knowing what was coming. Cross kept her eyes on the road. This time we know. This time we're ready. The Patterson SUV pulled away from the curb, rolling toward the same southern highway Jake's parents had taken 20 years earlier. Jake and Cross followed at a careful distance. Subject is mobile, Agent Torres reported over the comms. Terry Brennan has left the dealership, heading eastbound on Route 33. Mike's warning had been right. Terry took the bait. He even asked Mike what time the Pattersons were leaving, which route they'd take, how they liked the minivan. Classic predator behavior, Torres had said earlier, fishing for details under the guise of customer service. Now he was closing in. As the convoy made its way out of the city farmland and forests replaced shopping centers and stoplights, cell signals weakened. The feeling of isolation grew. Jake clenched his fists as trees blurred past the window. "We're coming up on 682, Cross said. "That's where Terry will try to get ahead of them." Torres's voice crackled. "Subject just exited at 682, not refueling. Parked with engine running, talking on his phone. He's calling his enforcer," Jake said, "the one who'll make the stop. Or maybe it's him this time," Cross said darkly. Jake's stomach dropped. "You think he'll do it himself? He's desperate," she replied. "He knows we're closing in. If he thinks this is his last score, he may want to handle it personally." Jake couldn't breathe. 10 minutes later, Torres came on again. Subjects back on the highway, closing in on the Patterson vehicle. Jake watched through the windshield as the familiar topography of Kentucky rolled toward them, tree-covered hills, narrow bridges, gravel-side roads. "Intercept car is in place at mile marker 127, Cross confirmed." "But then hold on," Torres said sharply. "Subject just accelerated. He's overtaking the Pattersons." What Jake sat bolt upright. "He passed them," Torres confirmed. "He's not pulling off. He's heading farther south." "Abort," Cross barked. "All units, subject is aware of surveillance. Abort intercept, fall back and reassess." But it was too late. As they crested a hill, Jake saw it. Terry Brennan's truck parked sideways across the highway, blocking both lanes. Just like a checkpoint, just like before, and in his hands a shotgun. The Patterson family's SUV screeched to a halt, boxed in by Terry ahead and surveillance cars behind. "He's got them pinned," Jake said, flinging open the door. "Jake, wait." Cross tried to stop him, but he was already running. Terry Brennan stepped from his truck like a soldier marching into war. Flannel shirt flapping in the breeze, muzzle of the shotgun rising. Terrence Brennan, Jake roared, "Put it down!" Terry turned, startled, then sneered. "Jake Morrison, you should have died with the rest of them." Jake stopped 20 feet away, hands raised. "This is over. You're surrounded." Terry cocked the shotgun. "Rick always said you were a soft-hearted little bitch. All that digging, all that whining. Now you're just another loose end." The gun swung toward Jake. From the tree line a single shot rang out. Terry's chest erupted in a red mist. His body crumpled to the pavement. The shotgun clattered beside him. Torres emerged from the forest rifle still warm. Subject neutralized. The Pattersons scrambled from their SUV shaken but alive. Jake stared at the man who had murdered dozens, who had inherited his brother's sins and made them his own. He felt no triumph, only grief, and the silent weight of all the families who hadn't been saved in time. In the following weeks, Jake struggled to process everything. He visited the forest graves again, this time for closure, not discovery. He met with more families, comforted them, shared their stories, told them they weren't alone. Cross pulled him aside one day at the FBI field office. "You helped stop something evil, Jake, but you're still carrying it." Jake gave a tired smile. "I don't think it ever goes away." She handed him a folder. "Brennan's financials, offshore accounts, enough for restitution. We're working with the Department of Justice to set up a victim support fund." Jake flipped through the pages, but his mind was already somewhere else. "I want to build something," he said, "a place for families like ours, people who are still searching, people who never got answers." Cross arched an eyebrow. "Like a crisis center, exactly," Jake said. "Funded by the book deal and Brennan's blood money." 3 months later, as concrete is poured into the foundation of the Morrison Family Crisis Center, Jake receives a call. Another missing family, another unanswered question, and the chilling possibility that someone else has picked up the Brennan's playbook. 3 months had passed since Terry Brennan bled out on a Kentucky highway, but for Jake Morrison, the war hadn't ended. The construction site buzzed behind his Columbus home. A sign hung proudly on a temporary fence, "Morrison Family Crisis Center, helping families find their way home." Concrete had been poured, framing had begun. What once had been a dream in a notebook was rising from the ground. Jake stood at the edge of the property with a clipboard in one hand and a cup of black coffee in the other. The wind bit through his hoodie. His eyes wandered across the early framework, but his thoughts were elsewhere. His phone buzzed. A message from Mike Brennan. Need to talk. Found something. Urgent. Jake called him back immediately. Mike answered on the second ring, his voice tight-low. Jake? I found a lockbox hidden in the dealership. Jake's stomach turned. What kind of lockbox photos? Families. Same as before. Dates, insurance details. Some are recent, like within the last few months. Jake's heart dropped. Are you saying someone else is continuing the operation? I think so. And I think it's my uncle. Terry's younger brother, my Uncle Terry. He took over after Dad got arrested. Jake remembered him vaguely, quiet, unassuming. The kind of man who blended in. The kind of man no one suspected. Mike's voice cracked. There's a name on the list, Taylor family. They disappeared last week. News says they never came back from a camping trip. Their car was found abandoned, same pattern. Jake didn't hesitate. Don't go home. Don't go to the dealership. Meet me at my place, now. By that evening, Jake's house had become an impromptu command center. Detective Cross arrived from Kentucky, followed by Agent Torres and a tech specialist from the FBI. Mike sat at Jake's kitchen table, pale and trembling, while the agents reviewed copies of the photos and files he'd found. Same pattern, Torres said grimly. Photos taken at time of purchase, insurance documents flagged, travel itineraries tracked, all filtered through dealership records. Cross spread a map across the table, marking red pins where vehicles had been sold and where families had last been seen. Jake leaned over her shoulder. I know that name, he said, pointing to a pin near Columbus. The Pattersons. I did some remodeling for them. They mentioned a family trip next week. Torres checked his laptop. Confirmed. Purchased a minivan 3 weeks ago. Scheduled to drive to Gatlinburg next Monday. Jake's jaw clenched. They're next. We set a trap, Cross said. Warn the Pattersons, get their cooperation. Insert surveillance teams. Set up intercept points along the route. Torres nodded. We use Terry Brennan's own method against him. Jake frowned. You want to use them as bait? They'll never be alone, Cross assured him. Every mile will be monitored. We won't let history repeat. Mike looked down at his hands. I can't believe this is still happening. After everything, Jake placed a hand on his shoulder. Your father and uncle started this, but you're helping us finish it. Cross leaned over the table. We need full access to the dealership. Surveillance wiretaps, maybe even a planted agent. Jake's eyes narrowed. What if he finds out? If he realizes we're onto him, he'll run, or worse, speed up his timeline. Torres pointed to 3 highlighted names on the laptop. 3 families, 3 upcoming trips. We don't have time to build a perfect case. Jake's voice was steady. Then we act now. The following morning, Jake and Cross met the Patterson family at their home. The parents were understandably shaken, but after hearing the full truth and seeing the names on the list, they agreed to help. This is insane, Mr. Patterson said, but if it helps stop him, you'll be protected the entire way, Jake promised. You won't be alone. The plan was set for Tuesday. The Pattersons would drive south as planned, while surveillance teams watched every turn. Mike told his uncle the exact details he'd been coached to deliver route time, even what snacks the Pattersons packed. Everything felt hauntingly familiar to Jake. The same nervous departure, the same highway stretches, the same dread gnawing at the edge of his gut. Tuesday arrived. The convoy moved south from Columbus along Highway 33. Jake sat in a trailing surveillance vehicle, Cross beside him, radios alive with chatter. Target vehicle mobile. Brennan vehicle 1 mile behind. Jake clenched the binoculars. He's doing it again. Same method, same roads. Torres came over the comms. Terry Brennan has pulled off at Route 682. Not fueling, just waiting. Talking on the phone. Same timing window, Cross said. Setting up the intercept. At mile marker 127, the fake deputy was in position. A legitimate FBI agent in full uniform, dashboard camera rolling ready to simulate the stop. But something shifted. Subject vehicle accelerating, Torres reported. He's passing the target vehicle. He's not stopping. Jake's blood ran cold. He knows. It's a trap, and he knows. They crested a hill and saw it, Terry Brennan's truck blocking the road completely. Patterson stopped. Behind them, surveillance vehicles were boxed in. Jake leapt from the car. "I'm going in. Wait," Cross shouted. But Jake was already moving. Terry stepped from his truck with a shotgun in hand. His face was rage twisted into flesh. "Jake Morrison. Should have buried you with your damn family." "You're done, Terry," Jake said, walking slowly forward. "This ends today." Terry raised the shotgun. "I'll finish what Rick started." And then one shot. A sniper round from the forest dropped him instantly. Torres stepped out from the tree line. "Suspect down," she said. Jake stood frozen as the blood pooled beneath Terry's body. Another predator dead. Another nightmare ended. But Jake knew better now. Nightmares didn't end. They evolved. The concrete foundation had hardened. The frame was up. The roof was half finished. 3 months after the failed interception and the death of Terry Brennan, the Morrison Family Crisis Center stood proudly behind Jake's Columbus home, a monument to 20 years of grief, justice, and transformation. Jake stood in the early morning haze, watching workers install the front entrance sign, helping families find their way home. Behind him, Detective Cross walked up, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you could use this," she said, handing one over. "How does it feel?" Jake sipped. "Like a beginning. I've spent most of my life chasing ghosts. This feels like something solid. You've already helped so many. Michelle Thompson, Patricia Henderson, all those families who never knew what happened until you pushed the system to look." Jake nodded slowly. "It still doesn't feel like enough. 47 people buried in those woods. And now we've confirmed at least 6 more families connected to other dealerships. Copycats, maybe. Greed is contagious." Cross sighed. "There's no bottom to what some people will do for money, but you've started something here. You've made it harder for those monsters to hide." A pickup truck rumbled into the lot. Jake recognized the driver immediately, Mike Brennan, the nephew of one killer, the son of another. Mike had spent the last 3 months helping on-site learning construction, helping with logistics, donating every cent of his inheritance. "How's he doing?" Cross asked. "He still wakes up screaming sometimes," Jake said, "but he's trying to make it right." And the dealership shut down. Mike donated the land to the county. They're building a memorial park. The names of every victim will be etched in stone. They walked into the building together. Inside, temporary walls sectioned off future offices, counseling rooms, meeting spaces, a resource library. In the lobby, blueprints for a memorial wall hung beside a table of missing person flyers. Jake gently touched the corner of one, Michelle's little brother, age 9. Lost in 2003, found because Jake hadn't stopped searching. His phone rang, unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Jake Morrison." A woman's voice trembled through the line. "My name is Linda Martinez. My husband and son disappeared during a camping trip in 2001. I saw your interview on the news about the crisis center. I was hoping maybe you could help me find them." Jake closed his eyes, the words hitting like a prayer. "Yes, ma'am. That's exactly why we're here." He scribbled her information on a nearby pad. A case number, a location, a name that had almost been forgotten. Cross watched from across the room, her eyes glinting with quiet respect. Jake hung up the phone and looked out the window where the sun had begun cutting through the morning mist. The same street where he had once watched his family drive away on a trip they would never return from. The same window he'd stared through for 2 decades waiting for answers. Now he wasn't waiting anymore. He was building something. He was making sure no one else had to wait that long again. That afternoon, Jake added Linda Martinez's name to a growing list on his desk, names of families he was helping people still searching. As he wrote, he glanced at a photograph on the wall behind him. His parents, David and Sarah. His sisters, Jenny and little Sarah, all smiling beside the yellow Honda on the day they left. The photo used to break him. Now it gave him purpose. Jake had learned that justice didn't always come cleanly or completely, that knowing the truth didn't erase the pain, that the dead don't come back. But he also learned something else, that purpose can grow from pain, that one man's refusal to forget could ignite a chain reaction across states and lives, that monsters can be exposed and that healing while slow was possible. As evening settled over Columbus, the lights in the crisis center flickered on for the first time. Jake sat at his desk, a fresh case file in front of him. The war wasn't over, but for the first time it felt like the good guys were winning.